Hello everyone, this is part 18 of What If Naruto Awakened New Skills, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. For the next 3 hours the group just sat and rested, even Naruto despite having more chakra left than any of the others had begun with. They sat and talked, learning more from Itachi about his reasons for K the clan and from Obito about his reasons for not returning to Konoha after he escaped the rock slide that should have K him. During this time Naruto also created several clones to go about and collect the heads from the remains of the Akatsuki members. Well then, shall we go? Asked Naruto, standing up and offering his hand to Hinata. Slowly the rest of the group roused and raised themselves from the floor and made their way out of the cave, across the river and began to make their way back to Konoha. The trip to Konoha was long and arduous, taking nearly 2 weeks, not so much due to the physical exhaustion of the as more from the mental exhaustion. Many of the revelations from Itachi and Obito had answered questions but also raised many more in the minds of Sasuke and Kakashi. Sasuke had given a lot of thought to Itachi's reasons for K the clan, as well as sparring him, and the more he thought about it the more it seemed that Itachi now held regrets about K the clan only in regards to the punishment that was to accompany it, but Sasuke was also giving thought to letting Ibiki loose on his elder sibling, which would certainly get the truth, despite the mental damage that it may do to let the sadist known as the head of interrogation demonstrate some of the finer points of his work for Itachi. Kakashi had his own dilemmas to deal with. Obito's survival seemed to come at the price of his mind's stability. He now seemed to be split into essentially 3 parts. The first was that of a young boy, goofy, carefree and always interested in being a good boy, regardless of what that seemed to entail. He would select a person in the group at random when in this state and would do whatever they commanded, whether it was to squash a bug, jump off a cliff or K someone, as long as they praised him for doing it. This personality also seemed to forget almost everything from its last time as the surface personality and would start almost completely fresh with only certain pieces of information remaining. The second was far more serious and completely autonomous, but it also recalled everything from its previous time at the surface, which meant it wasn't going to make any attempts at escape. Although it was quite apparent it was a somewhat darker personality, apparently taking from Obito's shinobi side, and where the carefree side was his natural want to do good, this was his shinobi side, suspecting everyone of being an enemy and willing to K at a moment's notice to ensure his safety and whatever the mission he thought himself on was. The final side was the balance in the middle, what was left of the complete Obito, which had until recently, it seemed, retreated into his own mind to preserve itself, but with Kakashi's realization it had once again come to the forefront, but was now switching with the other 2 personalities at random intervals. Sometimes it was there for whole days, others it would be there for only a few minutes, if even at all. It was Kakashi's firm hope that Inoki would be able to help Obito piece his tattered mind back together, and as soon as it was done they would be able to go and look for Rin. He also hoped that Minato would be able to assist them in finding her personally rather than it just being himself and Obito. Yugito and Gaara were also struggling to hold themselves together. They were trying to adapt to the knowledge that kept jumping to the forefronts of their minds that they had gained when absorbing their prisoners. Naruto's illogical thinking pattern had been his savior, as thoughts had always just appeared in his head, so he'd learned to just file them away for when he needed them, but it wasn't so easy for the quick but straight line thinking Yugito and Gaara, who was used to having a second mind screaming at him but also helping him deal with his thoughts effectively. In fact, after Minato had applied a certain seal over his previous one, Shukaku had been more of a help than a hindrance, much like Kyuubi had been to Naruto in the short time before Naruto absorbed him to save Hinata. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, 17 days after their initial departure from Konoha, the group of now 12 shinobi arrived at the gates of Konoha. The guards summoned an Anbu escort and the group made their way through the streets. Glares came from all sides, not directed at the 3 now former Jinchuriki but at Itachi, as well as many curious looks directed at the masked form of Obito, as they did not know who the group had brought with them, or why they had. After a 20-minute walk through the streets they finally arrived at the Hokage Tower and were swiftly ushered up the stairs and into the Hokage's office. Minato sat behind the desk with 3 shadow clones feverishly working away at a large pile of paperwork, although after a quick glance at the out tray on his desk. It was apparent that he was in fact in the last third of the work that had likely arrived on his desk an hour ago. Looking up, he noticed the large group in front of him. He stood up and moved round the desk before addressing the group. Well now, it's quite apparent that the mission was a success with everyone returning alive. I also note that Itachi has been brought back alive for trial, and I'm guessing that you are in fact Obito, he said as he looked over the group. Obito looked at Kakashi and a silent exchange passed between the two, telling Kakashi that it was the true persona of Obito currently present, so he stepped forward to inform their sensei of the decision that the two had come to on the trip back. Minato-sensei, after several days of observing Obito on our return trip, I've established that his survival came at a mental price and his mind is currently, he paused to find the best way to describe it, somewhat fragmented. As such, I discussed it with him on the trip whenever I could. He has split into 3 separate personalities and would like the help of Inoki Yamanaka to try and piece his mind back together into a single personality, or at least give him more control as to when the other 2 surface. He would also like Tsunade to try and fix the damage to his face that the slide caused, he explained. Minato contemplated the words of his student very carefully before he gave an answer, very carefully. Very well, I shall make the arrangements, but be warned, Obito. Despite my wish to return you to the folds of Konoha without delay after physical treatment, which I will happily make the arrangements for, until it can be determined whether you will be a risk to any team you are placed in, you will not be permitted to rejoin the shinobi ranks. Furthermore, until it can be ascertained that you are not a threat at all, you will be continually guarded, but understand that this is also for your own protection, as many may consider you a traitor and attempt to at least to provoke you into attacking them, if not outright attack you, said the Hokage, a stern tone in his voice. Thank you, Lord Hokage, for your help. I understand. I will let Kakashi fill you and Inoki in on the variations in the other personas, as I don't really know much beyond their existence. Until I feel that I can once again be a part of Konoha, I will not refer to you by the la I once did, said Obito. Minato nodded his understanding before turning to Naruto. So how many heads did you collect from them? He asked. All 5 of Pain's B, my K, Konan, Hinata's K, Kisame and Zetsuya Yugito's, Sasori's Gaara's. He also K Orochimaru, but all that was left of him was a pool of B. Hidden goes to Temari, Kakazu to Wahei, and finally Deidara is Kurene's, said Naruto, handing him the scroll. Good, good. Now anything else I need to know? Asked the elder Namikaze. Actually yes, I want Ibiki to talk with Itachi. He's given several motives on his trip back to Konoha for the M of the clan, and I wish to know if they are true before he goes to trial, said Sasuke. Minato merely nodded to this. Naruto spoke next. Last thing is that Gaara and Yugito are no longer Jinchuriki, although it seems for now at least Gaara is still an insomniac, he explained. Very well then, I will make the arrangements to notify Suna and Kumo as soon as possible. Now then, the arrangements have been made and you all have a week off to recuperate. After all, you've just managed a feat that no other village could do, as well as aiding Konoha's relations by removing a number of other countries' top missing ninjas. Anbu, said Minato a moment later, for Anbu appeared in the room. 2 of you take Obito to Tsunade and have her begin work on restructuring his face, then 1 of you inform Inoki Yamanaka that I wish to speak to him, the other 2 take Itachi to Ibiki and inform him that he is to ascertain his true motives for the M by any means necessary, as long as he leaves him alive and able to speak. The Anbu nodded and then escorted the 2 shinobi away to their separate destinations. As for you all, enjoy your rest. Dismissed, he said, and Kakashi, Wahei, Kurenai, Taihei and Yugito trudged out of the office, leaving Naruto, Hinata, Gaara, Utsuri, Sasuke and Temari. Dad, me, Gaara and Sasuke have been doing some thinking and some talking on the way back, and we've established 2 things. Firstly, something needs to be done about Oto, and we may need to offer sanctuary to a large number of its ninja force, as well as permit some, he paused to make sure he phrased it correctly, less than pleasant experiments to allow many of those that have been altered to be returned to normal. Minato mulled over his words for a while. I'm not sure what I'll be able to do in regards to that, but I'll see what I can do. What's the other thing? He asked. We've decided we'd like to take on Genin teams, replied Naruto. Okay, and what about you 3 ladies? Do you want teams too? Asked Minato. No, we don't think we have enough experience to be able to take teams yet. Naruto and Gaara both have the knowledge and experience of Biju, giving them more experience than most of the village combined, but even without that, their experience is growing up. which are shared to a greater or lesser extent with Sasuke, allow them to be able to do so, as well as their experience in battle far outweighs anything the rest of us have experienced, explained Hinata. Very well then, the next group will graduate from the academy in 3 months, so I will make the arrangements for each of you to get a team. Gaara, I would advise you speak with Kakashi and Guy to get an idea of the type of test you need to perform to allow them to pass. If they pass your test, it's then up to you to choose how you wish to train them, said Minato. Thanks, Dad. How about dinner tomorrow night? Asked Naruto. Sure. I'll see you then, replied Minato, and with that Naruto and Hinata vanished in a flash of yellow. Gaara and Utsuri vanished in a swirl of sand, and Sasuke and Temari just walked out the door, closing it behind them. Naruto and Hinata appeared outside Ichiraku's and walked in, taking seats on the far right of the stall, with Hinata next to the wall and Naruto on her left. Hey old man, anything new? Asked Naruto with a broad smile. Hinata loved seeing that smile of his. It was both genuine and full of life. Whenever she looked at it, it made her feel happy, like nothing could be wrong with the world. Ah, Naruto, so good to see you again. As a matter of fact, I came up with a new one a few days ago, but I've been waiting for you or your Akamaiki friend to come for you to try it for me. The first bowl is on the house, and for you, Miss Hyuga, said Tsuki. I'll have a bowl of chicken with a side of Naruto, please, said Hinata. Both Naruto and Tsuki smirked at the double meaning that could be taken from the order. Hinata looked at their smirks and very quickly put 2 and 2 together before blushing and ducking her head down. Tsuki decided not to further embarrass the girl, thinking it best to leave that for her fiancé. Coming right up, he said, and then turned round and began to prepare the 2 dishes. Naruto then leaned over to Hinata, putting his mouth beside her ear so that she could feel his breath. She shivered slightly as she felt it. You know, you can have a side order of me any time you want, all you have to do is ask, said Naruto, his voice serious and in such a low whisper that Hinata could only just hear it above his breathing. Hinata's blush intensified between hearing his words and the feeling that his breathing was causing. It was shortly followed by a nose B as her mind betrayed her with images of some of the things she could do with him. By the time she had managed to rein her wayward mind back in, the ramen had arrived. Naruto had been his usual self, and after he'd eaten the first bowl and told Tsuki what he thought of it, he'd learned a lot from Choji about the best way to taste new ramen over the 2-year span, and now Tsuki only allowed the 2 biggest customers he had to try new recipes. Naruto was currently plowing his way through his 5-bowl as Hinata grabbed a tissue and wiped her nose, then picked up a set of chopsticks, snapped them apart and began eating. It was at this point that Shino and Kiba walked in. Hey Tsuki, a bowl of pork and beef and a bowl of vegetable please, called out Kiba as he sat down on the center stool and Shino sat down on his right next to Naruto. Hello Naruto, Hinata, said the stoic boy. His tone carried a little happiness in it, but it was only barely noticeable. Over the last 2 years Naruto had spent quite a while around the members of Hinata's old team, and slowly but surely Shino had learned how to open up enough that the group could tell how he was feeling by slight differences in his voice. Hey Naruto, Hinata, how'd the mish go? Asked the ever-boisterous Kiba. It was widely considered that second to Naruto, Kiba was the most hyperactive and act first. Ask questions later ninja in Konoha, which was generally why he and Shino, both Chunin, usually ended up as a team. The analytical mind of the Aberrane, the perfect balance to the almost beast-like mind of the Inuzuka, both highly reliant on their instincts, had trained their instincts to rely on each other. Kiba's telling him when he should listen to Shino, and Shino's in turn telling him when to just let Kiba react to the circumstances at hand. Naruto slowly nodded his head, having paused his attack on the ramen to talk to the 2. The Akatsuki are no more, all except Itachi and Tobi are S. Tobi, now confirmed as Obito Uchiha, is getting medical attention for both facial reconstruction and mental rehabilitation, and Itachi is having a few visits with the sadist we know as the head of interrogation before his trial to establish his true motives regarding the M and his involvement with Akatsuki, replied the blonde shinobi. Cool, so what's the story with you now? You got another mish lined up or what? Asked Kiba before breaking the set of chopsticks and beginning to eat, Shino having already begun and was listening intently to the conversation. We have a week of downtime and then in 3 months myself, Gaara and Sasuke will take on Genin teams, replied the blonde between eating his ramen. You're taking on teams. That will be a good team if you pass them, Naruto, said Shino, the admiration in his voice apparent for those that knew what to listen for. I hope so. I also hope I get a decent team, replied Naruto. So what test are you going to give them? Asked Kiba. I'm not sure yet, but I know I'm not going to use the bell test Kakashi-sensei did. It was a good test, just a little too complicated for most genin to easily grasp the concept of, replied Naruto. As he finished, an Anbu appeared beside him, startling Kiba and getting a raised eyebrow from Shino. Naruto and Hinata had gotten used to it by now, so didn't even look up from their meals. Master Naruto, Lord Hokage has requested your presence. He said to tell you he has a mission you may find interesting, said the Anbu monotonously. Naruto raised an eyebrow and glanced at Hinata, who just shrugged. All right, tell the old coot'll be there when I've finished lunch, replied Naruto. He sensed the Anbu going for his blade and instantly appeared behind him in a flash of yellow. You know, ya really shouldn't have tried to attack the Hokage's son for doing what any son has a right to do, particularly when his son is the strongest ninja in the village by a long way, said Kiba in a bored tone as he turned back to his meal. Relay the message exactly, Anbu, or I'll have you on treason charges for attempting to attack a fellow Konoha shinobi, said Naruto sternly. The Anbu swiftly spun, took a step back and bowed before vanishing again. Naruto sat down and carried on with his meal. The Anbu appeared in the Hokage's office and quoted Naruto, expecting to be ordered to take him to Ibiki or bring him straight to the Hokage. What happened shocked him. Minato burst out laughing before asking the Anbu why he'd taken a step back. The Anbu quickly explained what he'd expected. Minato then asked him what had happened that would have made him quote Naruto exactly if he expected that reaction, and again burst out laughing before telling the Anbu that he should consider himself lucky Naruto went easy on him and had a kind heart, or he could have quite easily been S. To say the Anbu had been shocked was an understatement. Minato quickly dismissed the Anbu and was sure he'd never seen one leave his office quite so fast before. Naruto finished his meal and sat talking with Kiba, Shino and Hinata while they finished their meals. Once done, Hinata left with Kiba and Shino for training and to catch up while Naruto went to the Hokage Tower. He walked in waving to the secretary as he passed. She was new, he could tell because she instantly tried to stop him entering. You have to have an appointment to go in, the Hokage is busy right now, she said quickly, getting up to try and get in Naruto's way. Relax, he's expecting me, and even if he's busy it's nothing I won't know or learn about, he said, opening the door and walking in. What's so important you had to drag me away from the downtime you just gave me, you old coot? His tone was jovial but carried an undercurrent of annoyance. Minato turned his attention from the high-backed chair in front of him to Naruto. I'll get to that in a moment, Naruto. First though, I'd like you to meet the new fire daimyo. He's come to talk about my request for extra funding to make improvements to the academy. He'd like to know exactly what improvements need to be made. Can you think of any offhand? The group I assigned the task is still going through it. Asked Minato as the young man sitting on the chair stood up and turned to Naruto. His brown eyes hardened and narrowed at the blonde before him. He stood at around 5 feet 8 inches with quite a thin frame covered by the daimyo's robes. His face almost looked as though he hadn't eaten in weeks. His cheekbones were so prominent on his pale white face. A sharp nose sat in the center above his thin lips, and his eyebrows and forehead were covered by his locks of black hair that sat neatly over it, flowing down to his mid-en at the back. Who are you to insult your Hokage so? Demanded the daimyo. Naruto smirked. Quite the attempt at driving fear into someone. Just a tip though. Don't bother with any ninja above Chunin. They've faced far worse than you, and as for who I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze, 4th Hokage of Konoha, former Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko and wielder of the Fuengan and Yellow Flash Kekkei Genkai, said Naruto, his smirk widening as he watched the face of the man before him go from slight anger to severe anger, to realization to awe, and finally to embarrassment. My apologies, I didn't realize that you're the infamous Lightning Leaf that succeeded in acquiring the peace treaty with Kumo, as well as the reason so many other nations fear our own. I also understand you were the leader of the team that took out Akatsuki and Orochimaru, said the man sheepishly. Not a problem. Now in regards to your question, Dad, the biggest problem is the level of skill that the students are coming out with. Let's forget about the 3 basic jutsu and what could be done with them for now and look at the chakra and taijutsu areas first. In terms of chakra, the biggest problems are either control, or lack thereof, or chakra supplies. Take myself and Sakura as examples. I had a huge chakra store even if you ignore Kyuubi, and so my control was almost non-existent. Sakura on the other hand had excellent control, but her limit was shown when we did the tree climbing exercise. It took me and Sasuke several hours to get to the top and we still had enough energy to get back down. Sakura on the other hand got to the first branch on her first try, but then had to wait to regain enough chakra to get back down, he explained. Next is the taijutsu aspect. Let's use Sasuke as an example here. Trained by his clan, he had well above the basic academy taijutsu, but when compared to most genin after 2 or 3 C ranked mission he was terrible at using it in combat. Then let's look at Kiba. His style was also taught to him by his clan. It left him in the lower end of the class for taijutsu skill, but in full combat was far more effective, relying less on a set series of attacks and more on taking any opportunity given with anything available, he continued. On the physical aspect of things, the last is endurance. I had a lot to begin with, but only around the same as Kakashi. Now when you take into account the amount of chakra I wasted with poor control and then look at Sasuke and Kiba, the next 2 highest in my class for endurance, you find that they really didn't have enough, as well as lacking physical strength. After a 2-minute spar they were exhausted, and they both came from clans. In terms of paperwork, we did far too much. From 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, 5 days a week at the academy, and of that time only 1 afternoon was spent in physical training, and if it was raining then we didn't do taijutsu. Shuriken or kunai training, not a good thing. Furthermore, the things we studied were pretty useless, whether for civilian life or shinobi life. We really don't need to know that much about history. A class needs to be sorted out quicker as to those that have the potential to be shinobi and those that don't, then lengthen the hours that the shinobi are trained for and reduce the amount of time spent in the classroom. The final aspect is the jutsu. Now yes, Kawarimi and Bushin are good techniques, and even Jonin. Anbu and hunters will use henge. I also realize that teaching attack jutsu to potential civilians is anything but the best idea in the world, and I can tell you I'm glad they're not, but I do think that other jutsu need to be taught. For example, an earth defense would be useful. The only time there isn't earth around is when you're on the ocean, and they wouldn't be much good then anyway. Minato was a little surprised and the daimyo was astounded at this. So, just to clarify, you are talking about a complete shake-up of the current academy system? Asked Minato. Pretty much yes. When I look at it, the only reason we are able to be the strongest power with the largest shinobi force is because we put that many more in to begin with, and even compared with those that don't, our shinobi are often a lot older before they take on a mission of any real importance. My first C rank turned into an A rank, but we completed it and gained valuable experience from it. I would say that by the next Chunin exam came round, each of the new teams should have completed at least one high C rank mission, certainly if they intended to enter. So what about those that struggle with earth, like yourself with a primary affinity to wind? Asked Minato. I never said they needed it to pass, but they should be taught something that can only be used for defense and needs more chakra than the standard 3. Wind, fire and lightning are a problem because they lack any defense-based techniques. Really, even an earth wall could cause problems. I only used it as an example. We also need to look carefully at the actual passing tests. Again, too much paperwork. More focus needs to be on the physical side of things. I think we need some sort of individual survival test and some form of K to ensure that each person knows what they're getting into. Might also be an idea for those that struggle with K but have a high level of chakra control to be trained separately as medics. If they're started from a younger age, they'll be far more skilled, meaning more lives can be saved, and a life saved today is one more shinobi to strengthen our ranks. You raise some very interesting points for one so young, Minato. I'd like young Naruto here to teach half a class for the next 3 months, and we'll compare how capable the group he teaches is to the group taught normally. None will take the initial test, and instead we'll use the sensei's test to check them, said the fire daimyo. Ironic you should say that. I'd asked Naruto here because Iruka, who normally teaches, has fallen ill and is unable to teach for the next month, but I can arrange for someone else to take half the class if you want, replied Minato. I would like that very much, and depending on the results I may double the budget increase you asked for, said the daimyo. Very well, Naruto, here's the list of students in the class. Please select 15 that you will teach for the remaining 3 months till the genin test, said Minato, handing Naruto a clipboard and a pen. Naruto quickly looked through the names and selected the 15 students, mostly the ones with the lowest scores in the class, before handing the clipboard and pen back to Minato. An hour later, Naruto walked into the academy. By his right side was a young Chunin, probably 3 years older than he was, who obviously didn't know who he was by the sneers and glares he kept giving him. Finally Naruto had had enough. "Do you have a problem with me or something?" he asked the Chunin. The older boy turned to look at him. He stood a couple of inches taller than Naruto's 5 feet 7 inches, his light medium build attempting to give an aura of power against the younger boy. His eyes were blue, but not quite as light as Naruto's own, and were quite narrow and sat relatively close to his bulbous nose. His lower lip was about the thickness of a pencil and his upper was about half that. His shoulder-length light blue hair, held out of his face by his forehead protector instead framed it nicely, reminded Naruto of Mizuki, and his personality was rapidly appearing to be about the same. As he started talking, his voice sounded rather feminine. "I just can't see why that excuse we have for a Hokage would decided to have a runt like you teaching half the class," he sneered. Before he knew what had happened, he found himself against the wall under the harsh glare of Naruto. "Be careful what you say about the Hokage, or you may just find yourself or I could always give you to Ribiki first. I don't take kindly to people insulting my father, and just so you know, it wasn't the Hokage's decision for me to teach half the class. It was by order of the daimyo that I'm doing this," said Naruto, dropping the now scared Chunin unceremoniously into a crumpled heap on the floor. The Chunin slowly picked himself up, using the wall for support. "Why, you're his son," he croaked out, his teeth sore from the force of the impact. "Yes, and the second highest ranked ninja in this village. I take orders only from the Hokage or the daimyo directly. I outrank you, so you would be wise not to tick me off again after your comment," said Naruto, leaking enough intent to cause the Chunin to just about fall over, if not for the wall holding him up. "Now let's get to the class and we'll see what they're like," said Naruto, beginning to walk off. The Chunin had to quickly pick himself up to follow him. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.